give us a better understanding of church teaching on this matter and the perspectives from those working on the forefront of this issue, we're joined now by Sister Constance Veet, the Communications Director for the Communities of the Little Sisters of the Poor in Washington, D.C., Skylar Kovich, disabilities advocate and scholar. His published writings about assisted suicide have appeared in the Journal of Public Affairs and the Society of St. Sebastian, and Matthew Bunson, EWTN News Executive Editor and Washington Bureau Chief. Thank you so much for joining us. Sister Constance, to you, we just heard this story of Blanca, an elderly woman in Spain whose daughter did not believe in palliative care, but changed her mind when she saw it save her mother's life. Do you see this often in your work with the Little Sisters of the Poor, where you help the elderly poor and dying?
Well, thank you for having me, Nancy. I think here in the United States, perhaps there's a better understanding of palliative care, but we do see families who sometimes fear that by not having their elderly relative go to the hospital so that everything possible can be done, that they might be violating Catholic teaching. And so at times we do have to explain palliative care to them and make it clear that it's not aimed at ending their lives, and that it's aimed at making them comfortable for whatever time and whatever life they have left.
And you have homes around the globe, right?
Yes, we do.
Skylar, let's follow up on that. You're a prominent scholar and a voice on euthanasia and assisted suicide, but you're also a personal advocate for disability rights. Can you tell us more about your battle fighting for your rights?
So I've been totally blind since birth, and I will admit I don't have the kind of severe medical challenges that we're mainly talking about here. But one of the main concerns of disability rights advocates across the political spectrum is that once even a very limited legalization happens, there starts to be calls for even broader eligibility for euthanasia and assisted suicide, even including people with mental illnesses and other struggles that it was not originally intended for. Now, as a Catholic, I converted in college largely because of the theology and social teaching. I don't agree with legalization entirely, but sometimes some of the other arguments can be able to reach different legislators and different people. So, like, for example, in Canada, one of the left-wing parties, the New Democrats, has actually worked with the Conservatives to try unsuccessfully to stop assisted suicide. And so I'm really interested in that coalition building work. And we want to make it clear that we do not want to be seen as burdens by others or by ourselves.
That's right. You want to cross the aisle. Talking about those trends that you brought up in Canada, Matthew, what does the growing trend of legalization of assisted suicide in the U.S. say about how first principles are eroding in our country and how we're copycats of other countries?
Well, we're not just copycats. In some ways now we're pathfinders for a couple of reasons. The first is in this type of consumerist culture that we have now, that really we're seeing a decline in the recognition of the dignity of the human person. We can go back to some of the core problems created in our culture, both politically and elsewhere, by the rise of abortion, by the legalization of abortion, just as exactly what was warned would happen. And we can even go back to the legalization and the promotion of a contraceptive culture. And the other thing that we're looking at, though, is a decrease in hope, that people are being pushed into despair because of a lack of religious sense. But the other thing, too, is the development or rise of what Pope Francis calls a throwaway culture, that the human being is disposable, especially those who are sick, elderly, or have disabilities.
And let's go back to something Skylar said. We talk about this issue of crossing the aisle, the NDP in Canada crossing the aisle to fight for disability rights. Do you see a possibility for that here on the assisted suicide issue?
Well, our hope is that as the situation continues to deteriorate and the results of this look more and more like what we're seeing in Europe, in places like the Netherlands and Belgium and elsewhere, that sensible people on both political sides of the aisle are going to realize that something has to be done here to preserve life, because this is the slippery slope, as they say, is very slippery indeed where this is concerned.
And it causes us to have to stand up for our rights. Sister Constance, you fought for exemption rights for the Little Sisters of the Poor on the contraceptive mandate. Why is that important here, the importance of protecting your rights?
Well, because for us, Little Sisters of the Poor, we absolutely value and reverence the dignity of each person and each elderly person's life. And so, if we were to be forced into a situation where we were required to cooperate with those who wanted assisted suicide, it would be mission ending for us. I live in DC, and I actually attended the hearing when the vote was taken to legalize assisted suicide. And if we were not exempt, if we were forced to participate in that, it's just unthinkable to us as Catholic women consecrated to Jesus Christ that we would participate in taking the lives of those whom we love and care for.
And especially now when your ministry is so important with the impacts of COVID, fear,
Yes.
isolation, pain, are they making the legalization of euthanasia even more dangerous now?
The effects of the pandemic?
Yes.
I think perhaps, although I've been finding that the whole emphasis, it seems, toward long-term care is on preserving life, and at times preserving the physical life of the elderly. I think there's a lot of worries about liabilities and being sued and things like that. So it's not a holistic viewpoint, though. Everything is being done to keep the elderly and the frail from being infected with the virus without really helping to make sure that they still have quality of life. So we're in a little bit of a difficult situation from that perspective.
Great. Skylar, can you explain some of the political strategy around this? The frequency of the introduction of state-level bills, does that increase the ability of us to have a federal mandate on this?
There have been some attempts to legalize assisted suicide federally. They fortunately have not gone very far. There, as with what I mentioned with some left-wing parties in other countries, there still are some Democrats who don't agree with assisted suicide here in the U.S. They are just decreasing in number, which is part of what allowed the legalization in New Mexico to happen, where fewer Democrats crossed the aisle to vote against it. There are definitely lots of, as I said, groups working across coalitions, including disability rights groups like Not Dead Yet, as well as Catholic and other Christian groups. And there's definitely still many legislators who are open to seeing the perspectives of what the problems are with assisted suicide, but it's a very difficult fight in many states, and especially in Connecticut. Any listeners there should be watching out for a bill that just got out of committee and trying to call their state legislatures against that.
We'll make sure that we watch out for that as well. Sister Constance, Pope Francis talks about finding joy in the elderly and knowing our family history. How is this issue at the heart of what Catholics believe about life?
Well, I think that there's always something positive in life. There's always joy in life. Life is a gift, and just the fact that each day we wake up and are breathing and still alive, even though we may be in a state of frailty, is proof of God's love for us. And that really is at the heart of a joy that no one can take away from us, knowing that we are loved by God no matter what. And so when we also are able to surround the frail with love and care and tenderness, as our Holy Father speaks so often of tenderness, a revolution of tenderness, that again is a source of great joy for them. But it all starts with God's love for each person.
Thank you so much, Sister Constance and Skylar and Matthew. We'll keep up with these changes on this issue and continue our in-depth coverage.